Intent is clearly a key word here.
Sure.
What do you believe the intention of Armenians today is in calling this a genocide, if in your view it wasn't?
The intent is clear. The Armenians themselves indicate the famous three words: recognition, restitution, reparation. That's the slogan of Armenian Revolutionary Federation. The declaration of independence of today's Armenia includes lands in other country. Eastern Turkey is Western Armenia.
So you believe they still have designs on that land?
Oh, I still believe, and I'll tell you, as recent as 2 years, as you know, in every year, April 24, there's demonstrations in Ottawa in front of the Turkish embassy. I have the newspaper cutouts of placards in front of Ottawa in the year 2000, still calling Eastern Turkey is Western Armenia.
And you think they still want reparations as well?
Sure. And again, I can show you, I have it even here, some information bulletins in California where they're organizing meetings in 2006, as if these naming certain provinces in eastern Turkey, like Van, Erzurum, Kars, and indicating what they will do when they get it. I mean, this is an active dream, and it's going on.
How widespread do you think that part of the dream is within the Armenian community? I mean, there's always some people
Sure.
who will hold out these views, but is it widespread?
I hope it is not, and I know that there are, obviously, Armenian community is divided as any other community. There are Armenians from Lebanon, Egypt, and there are a lot of Armenians here from Turkey, which are a very good friend of mine. There are a lot of musical and cultural activities that the Turkish community does together with the Armenians from Turkey. There are Armenians living in Turkey right now with a large number, but there is a very active, radical element of the Armenian diaspora who's really doing most of the political...
Well, why would they care? They don't even live there. They live here.
Well, that's exactly what our point is. This issue should be left between Republic of Turkey and Armenia to deal. They are already talking about dealing with the border issues. I mean, as you know, President Obama was in Turkey just about a month ago, or less than a month ago.
Yeah.
That's right, and with the encouragement of them and the Swiss government, there are negotiations going on. This has to be tied up with the Nagorno-Karabakh withdrawal, the occupied land from Azerbaijan, but that's should be left between the two countries, not the Armenian diaspora in Canada or in the U.S.
Now I want to follow up on this notion of genocide and whether this is or whether this isn't in your view. And here, according to the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, are the key ingredients, the key factors that have to be in place to be able to use the word genocide. Let's bring these up if we can. Genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. Killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Now, given that description, how do the events of 94 years ago not meet that test in your view?
If you look at all these four groups you identified, you notice the absence of political groups there. And that was deliberately taken from that decision. And the Dashnaks and the Hunchaks were political groups fighting for the independence of Armenia, carving it out from the Ottoman lands with the encouragement of British and Russians. During wartime, there is not even a resemblance of intending to destroy a national, racial or ethnic group.
But you call them a political group. They're clearly an ethnic group, as well as with political aspirations, maybe.
Sure, but you have to also understand one thing. The wartime propaganda and the missionary activities have tremendous effects on this. Obviously, the Britain were trying to get the U.S. into the war, into the First World War, and there were a tremendous amount of Protestant missionary activities in the Ottoman Empire. And in fact, the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions in 1920s, during those years, during the World War, collected $116 million in the United States, which is by far the largest private charity donation affair, all by giving the notion that Muslims are slaughtering Christians. And obviously that creates tremendous reaction, and the money is pouring. So the evidence that is put in for genocide, majority of it is coming from these Protestant missions. Now, I want to bring up two things very important. One is we have to look at what the Armenian leaders of that time who lived through it are saying. And two very important evidences. One is Bogos Nubar, who was the president of the Armenian delegation to the Paris Peace Conference after the war in 1919. And he wrote a letter to the French minister, Stéphane Pichon, French foreign minister at that time, in December 1918, in order to be accepted to the Paris Peace Conference at a delegation, indicating how Armenians were de facto belligerents, how they assisted the Russians, how they fought with the French uniform against the Turkey.
And what was the response from France?
Sorry?
What was the response from France?
I don't know what the response from France was. At the end, they were not accepted as delegation, but that letter is an evidence. It's on the, this is from an Armenian chief of the delegation in 1918 saying this. Another one is the first prime minister of the independent Armenia, Hovhannes Khochaznuni, in 1923, what he said in the Congress of the Armenian Revolution Federation. It's a masterpiece indicating how they assisted 150,000 Armenians with Russian uniforms fighting against Turks, 40,000 of them with French uniforms fighting against Turks. I mean, these are words of Armenian leaders at that time.
Okay, but comment on this then. I think most people remember Adolf Hitler's famous line, which is, of course we can get away with the Holocaust against the Jews because who remembers the genocide against the Armenians, and at that time it was only 20 years prior.
Do you want my reaction to it?
Yeah.
Sure, that gives me pause, because that is one of the fallacies, propaganda by Armenians. Hitler never said that word, those words. It has been scholarly, I can show you a lot of scholarly evidence, document studies, that this is totally false.
He never said that.
He never said that, and how this is being propagandized by Armenians. And it is so interesting that every year when there's a debate in the Canadian Parliament or US Parliament, every politician that comes up says those words, as if it's a fact. It is not a fact, it's been proven to be false, but it is a very powerful tool because it ties it to the Jewish Holocaust. And obviously to get that sympathy, the Jewish Holocaust is there, obviously it's a fact, and it's been tried. There's the Nuremberg trials that established that fact. There has never been a trial for the Armenian genocide. In fact, the one biggest attempt to do this was between 1918 and 1921, the Malta trials, where Istanbul was the capital of the Ottoman Empire, was occupied by the British at that time. With all the, obviously, Armenian lobbying efforts, they arrested 140 high-ranking Ottoman officials and ministers, brought them to Malta, the island of Malta. And for 2.5 years, they searched evidence in the archives of the Ottoman Empire, which they were under their control in Istanbul, in London,
and it was
in Washington. It was no evidence, and they released all these people.